you all see the screen? So just give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. We'll go ahead and get started for the sake of time so everyone has some fun in the board game we're going to play. So thank you all for joining tonight for our Boards in Gear, second part of our session for how to get on a board. We have Kristen Merrifield with us, the CEO of the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits. And we definitely want to thank the Junior League of Phoenix Foundation for providing us with a grant to have been able to have Kristen for a session earlier last week and for today. A lot of great information, some great way to learn about getting on a board in the last one and now how to even dive deeper into that. So thank you, Kristen, for joining us. And I will now stop sharing and pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Abigail. It's great to be here with you all. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get going. All right. So let me know, there's few enough of us on here if you want to. I think some of you have your videos on. How many of you, you can also put this in the chat, were with us for the first session? I know Abigail and Jessica were for sure. Kelly, I see your hand. Awesome. Katie, great. Jenny, okay, awesome. So a few of you, so we will just briefly mention just a couple things as a review, but we're going to get into some new stuff today, so thank you. So my second question is, how many of you are currently serving on a board or you have served on one in the past? Give me a hands if you have served or currently served. Okay, so a few of you. Okay, awesome. This will be a good mix. I can't see the other hands. I'm going to assume they're down, but there could be very well more of you saying, yeah, I am. I just don't want to show my face at 6 o'clock on a whatever day this is. So the board game will be fun because it'll definitely be a good mix of those of you that have been on a board and those of you that haven't. So that's fantastic. All right, so today we're gonna get our boards in gear. We're gonna talk about that next level of board governance. If you were on the first session, you know I definitely am open to answering your questions throughout. So I think Abigail, I'm sure, would be happy to help me look at that chat again so we can answer your questions as we go. I always love to start every board training I do with this, and we did it in the first session, but I want to just talk about what a board member really is. And to me, this is a really weighted statement, and I want people to walk away knowing that serving on a board is not something to be feared, but it is something to be revered, because you are a steward of the mission on behalf of the community. So the community is entrusting you as board members to be a good steward of the resources that are entrusted to you, to make sure that the mission of that organization, why they were formed, is fulfilling that mission in the community and serving the people that really rely on that nonprofit. So when you enter that boardroom or when you go into the Zoom room for those meetings, just remember that you really are there to be a steward of that mission on behalf of the community. We talked about this in the first session, so I'm not going to go into it too deep, but just an organization, a nonprofit, a for-profit, they all have the same stages, but it goes through a stage of growth. It starts to grow, it becomes mature. Potentially, as it goes down the curve, it may become stagnant. Maybe its mission is not as relevant, and then it can either kind of fall off and maybe close, or it can renew. It can maybe have a new mission statement. It can have some new programs. The thing just to remember as we go through this training is that at every stage, the organization may need a little bit of a different type of board member. They might be looking for different skills, different engagement, and it's important to make sure that you fit and that your needs and your desired engagement, your skill sets, your background fit, because at the startup phase, there might be a lot of hands-on things and people might really love to do that. But as you get into the mature phase and maybe there's a staff, there's things that other folks are able to do for the organization, and now you're being asked to create policy and look at strategic planning. And if there's a mismatch there, then neither you or the organization are going to feel fulfilled and valued. So just think about where you want to be engaged and what level and type of organization. And something I'll say through this, and there's going to be a lot of question marks that we ask later on, a bad question doesn't exist for a board member. So not just in the boardroom, but when you're going through the process of determining what board you want to be on, asking questions is really the best way for you to figure out, what am I getting into? Is it a fit for me? Am I going to be engaged and fulfilled? So a good question in this phase when you're first interviewing would be, where is the organization? You know, what stage of growth are you at, and what are you looking for most in a board member? I always like to put this here too. There are official board duties. We're going to talk about a variety of different board. We're going to talk about the 4 W's of board service, but there are official legal board duties that I always want to make sure that everyone fully understands, that when you're taking on that role, no matter what stage of the organization you're at, you do have the legal duty of due care, meaning that you're going to do everything in your best effort to take care of the assets, the people, the things that have been entrusted to that organization. And some of that can mean, hey, when I get the board packet, I'm going to make sure that I review it. I'm going to make sure that I understand those financials that I'm approving. And I can do that by asking questions. And then the legal duty of loyalty, that I'm making decisions in the best interest of the organization, not my own. I may have my own business. I may have my own things that I do in the community. But when I'm there and I'm serving as a board member, I don't have any conflicts of interest, things that I have a different hat on when I'm making those decisions. I'm doing everything I can on behalf of that organization. And then finally, the legal duty of obedience, which making sure that the nonprofit is doing everything in accordance to the law, that they're doing their filings, their 990s, or other things they may be required to do for grants or things like that, that I'm also aware that I don't have to do those things necessarily, but I'm making sure that I'm making sure the organization I'm serving on is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And Abigail, feel free to stop me anytime if you see any questions in the chat. Sometimes when I switch back and forth, it causes me to lose my PowerPoint presentation.
No, you're all
right.
I will
So
monitor the chat and let you know if I see anything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get into the meat of what we're going to talk about. And like Abigail said, we are going to play a little game at the end here. But first, let's set the stage so you have the knowledge to win that game, because I'm super competitive. So not that there's winners or losers, but at least you'll be prepared. So there are these 4 W's of board service, and we're going to go through each of these in detail. The first is the why. We talk about, why does the organization exist and why do you serve on its board? It's really important that you have a connection to that cause and you fully understand what your role is and what the role of the organization is in the community. The second one is what is your job, right? Unfortunately, and we'll mention this later, it's unpaid and it's volunteer. So if any of you are hoping that, man, I'm going to land this nonprofit board job and I'm going to get these great, financial, or I'm going to get a job out of it, unfortunately not. It is out of the goodness of your heart. But there is a job description. What do I do when I'm there? Just as you would have a job description for your regular full-time job, you do have a job description, or you should know what your roles and responsibilities are as a board member. And then who serves on that board and who works to reinvigorate it over time? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that the right people are around the table at the right time, like we talked about, for that organizational life cycle? And then how does a board operate to achieve its mission? A lot of times we think about operations in relation to the organization itself, the human resources, the financials, the programs and things like that. But the board, a high functioning board, should also think about its own operations. How are decisions made? What is the makeup of the board? How do we bring people in and potentially have to let them go? How do we operate to be most effective as board members? So let's jump into that. The next few slides, I'm going to walk you through each of those areas, and we're going to talk about what you should know, and when you know that, how do you show that? Because it's one thing to have the knowledge, but if we don't act on that knowledge, then again, we're not fulfilling that role of the board member. So the first one we talked about was the connection to the cause. And this really means, as a board member, that we understand that, it's not just our one organization operating in its own silo and we're just doing what we do, and we don't think about how does our organization really fit in with the bigger community. Maybe we serve a specific geographic area, maybe we serve statewide, maybe we're in the arts community. But how do we operate within that larger context? And what circumstances caused this organization to exist? Do we know, okay, it's an animal welfare organization. Okay, that's great in and of itself, but do we know the story? Do we know what that connection, that passion is? Do we understand then how to articulate it? Can we also be aware that we are working in a space with others, partner organizations, other community members. Maybe this could even include the clients that you serve or legislators that are in your district, the media. All these different organizations and entities and people can help give voice to those stories, can help give voice to the challenges either that the nonprofit is facing or that they're trying to solve in the community. So our understanding of that why, and if you've ever heard the TED Talk by Simon Sinek, he talks about the why. It's a really great one. I'll try to remember, send that link to you, Abigail. You can use it in the follow-up if you haven't seen it already. But it's great because it talks about starting with the why, not the what. And this is really what this piece is talking about. So when you know the why, this is what you should really be thinking about. Your connection to that mission. I often challenge folks who maybe find themselves on a board because they were voluntold. Hey, you know, you're the VP of blah, blah, blah. You need to serve on this board. Even if you find yourself in that role, or even if you look at nonprofit service as a way to put something on your resume, and these things aren't bad, right? These are all very true, real motivations. I always challenge folks, find the connection to the cause. Maybe you never had to go to the food bank to get a box of food, but do you know someone who did? Do you know someone who's been impacted by when the schools closed and their kids couldn't get the food they needed with free lunch and free breakfast? Find that connection and be able to articulate that. And then board members, they have a powerful voice in connecting their organization. Oops. There we go. And connecting the organization to those causes and peoples of influence. So a lot of times when you first start out in board service, you know, you might say, well, I don't really have a big circle of influence. I don't really have a connection to people that have millions of dollars to give to the organization. However, you as an individual have people in your circle that no one else may have a connection to. And so thinking about how do I articulate what I'm passionate about, and how do I get others to also see that the same way? And then also the connection to the cause has to do with advocacy. And we talked about this a little bit in the first session, but be an advocate. You can. Don't be afraid to raise your voice and stand up for what you believe in. And if you're serving on a board and your personal feelings about a variety of issues are in conflict to the organization's, right? Do you see where the conflict is happening? You're not going to be able to fully be an advocate and fully be an ambassador. So think about those things. Make sure that their mission, their values align with your personal values so that it's a very authentic thing when you're advocating for them, or you're even going to the legislators and saying, hey, we need you to vote XYZ because it will help what we do as a nonprofit organization. It's extremely powerful for board members to know how to articulate and be engaged in these areas. So when you know these things, this is how you show it. You're able to articulate, you're able to have those conversations. And when we used to do this training, different variations of this in person, I would say, hey, you know, I've got $20 in my pocket. If someone can stand up and tell me your organization's mission, and I still have that 20. I haven't had to give it away yet, but what makes me chuckle is how focused we are in board members being able to recite the mission statement. That's good, right? And that's okay. There's a place for that. But what's more powerful is when you know the mission, you feel the mission, and talking about it and articulating that connection just comes naturally because you believe in that and you've really taken that to heart. You're the ambassador for that organization in the community. Again, there's so many people I've met with over the years that are board members that say, I don't know any big corporate people. I don't know any donors. I don't have the circles of influence. And then we would sit down and start looking at all their connections to the community, who they did business with, who their kids went to school with, who all these people. And they would go, oh, that's important. And they're like, oh my God, yes, we've been trying to get a contact at that organization forever. So it's the little things that you might not think about that actually can be really critical. So being open to that and kind of being introspective and going, who do I know? Who else would think that this is important? And then we're engaging key community decision makers in telling the story. So that could be your volunteering to participate in that lobby day at the state capitol. Organizations do that. You're willing to talk to the media. I love it when I can call my board members and say, hey, the media's heard from me like 20 times about why this is important. can you're running a nonprofit, or you're a mother, or you're a family member of someone who's been impacted, would you be willing to talk to the media? And that's such a great resource for an organization to have. All right, moving on to the what, the board responsibilities. Board members fulfill their responsibilities by setting a clear mission to ensure the impact of that mission, and ensuring that the organization is compliant with all of those legal accountability and transparency. So let's talk about what that really means. So this is how we know the what, and we know what our responsibilities are. Sorry guys, I keep trying to move your faces and it keeps advancing the slides. I gotta love Zoom. All right, so board members are committed to the mission and the work of the organization. That goes back to that, if you're not fully engaged or don't fully agree with the mission of the organization, it's going to be hard for you to be committed to that. But this could also show that you are showing up to board meetings, right? That you are committed to the work, that you're engaged when you're on Zoom, that you're paying attention. You don't have 16 things going on, and I'm the worst one. I have such ADD when I'm on Zoom, so I have to shut everything down. But it also means that you're ensuring that your organization is compliant. So all organizations, if they're earning revenue at some level, are going to need to file a 990. It may look different. And the 990, for those of you that aren't familiar, is the tax return, if you will, for the nonprofit organization. And so making sure that that's filed, knowing when that's due. Do they have to file certain large grant reports by a certain date? If you see that your organization has $1 million grant and you're a $1.2 million organization, knowing what's required to keep that grant running is really important, right? Making sure we don't lose our license. Maybe we're a foster care organization or we're a health organization. Making sure that we don't lose those things by making sure things are filed is really important. We review the budget and the IRS Form 990. Did you know on the 990, it asks, and it has a checkbox asking if the board has seen the 990. So being able to check that and say, yes, we have seen that, is a really important piece of that. And then reviewing the budget before that's approved every year, that the board has had engagement on that, depending on what size of board it is. It could be that you actually help put it together, or it could be that you have seen it at a high level and you've asked those questions that are really important to know. The board members possess and refer to key organizational documents when fulfilling responsibilities. So any guesses, and you can sound off in the chat here, what are some documents, some key documents that you think would be really important for a board member to have access to have seen at some point? I'm going to open the chat here so I can see this too. Bylaws, Jenny, great answer. Yes, that is your law book. That is, you basically have created your own laws for that organization. Strategic plans, Katie, that's a really fantastic one. What are we doing? Where are we going? How do I fit into that as a board member? The balance sheet and the income statement, absolutely. We talked about that last time, that you're seeing those consistently. And policies and procedures, Chris, that's a great one. Some board members get tripped up here because sometimes those policies and procedures look like staff documents. They are giving staff guidance, but when a board gives staff guidance through a policy and procedure, that is the way to do that. That's the effective way to do that, as opposed to telling the staff what to do, right? That's at that governance level. Annual budget, Christina, that's great too. And so some of these things, if you're on a board or you're thinking about being on a board, would be really good to have in the board prospect packet or the board manual when you first come on board. So a lot of those are really key for you to have and then be able to refer back to. And then you're adding knowledge, resources, and connections to that organization. Maybe it's for development, it's key programs and services. And again, if that organization has a team, those programs and services, you may not be putting them together and actually carrying them out, but you are providing oversight. Maybe there's metrics or a dashboard that you're seeing so you can see how those programs and their impact are being carried out. If you're on a smaller working board of newer organization, you may actually be creating those programs. You may actually be the volunteers that are carrying those out. So it depends on the level, but still you're adding your knowledge, your expertise. You're saying, hey, I know someone who could do this, or hey, I was on a board and here's a template of a policy that we use. You're adding to that. And I think when I was clicking around on your faces, we may have missed the no, but I think we covered that in the show. Financial responsibilities, you all talked about that. Risk management, we talk sometimes about that life cycle stage, that if an organization is first starting and they're in early growth, it's great to have board members who are less risk adverse. They're willing to kind of push the envelope, take a few chances, put some things out there. As the organization grows and gets into maturity, there's probably a little less desire to do a lot of risky moves. There's probably some more calculated risk. But then as you go around that life cycle curve and you may come to where the organization is kind of getting stagnant, it's maybe in decline, they need somebody to come in and turn it around, then you need an infusion of board members who are a little bit more risk-taking, are willing to kind of step out there and try new things. So a lot of these board responsibilities, while they always exist in the life cycle curve, they may look different and there may be a balance of a different number of people that they have. We used to do some organizational training and we talked about the idea that there's some of us are builders and we have our builder hat on, and some of us are protectors and we have the protector hat on. And it's really important that you have the balance on a board of both of those because there's important pieces to each of them. All right, The Who. I think that's a band, right? I think that might have been maybe before my time, but my little owl friend over here on the right. Composition and development of the board. So it's the board's responsibility to make sure that the board itself actually has the people, the characteristics, the experience needed to not only run the organization and help provide the oversight, but man, let's make sure that that organization is representing the people that the organization serves and needs. There's so much talk right now and training and different things about diversity and equity and inclusion. And we got to make sure that our boards are reflective of the voices, not only that diverse voices are around the table, but also that they're reflective of the community that we're in, the community we serve. I know a lot of organizations have done amazing things where they actually have someone who graduated out of their foster care program is on their board. They're 19, you know, they don't have all the things behind their names that maybe some of us do, but their voice is so important. Maybe that means having a social worker. Maybe it means having an artist, but making sure that it's not just a board that's so separated because maybe they have the financial means, maybe they have the connections to be on the board, but that it really does represent who we are, why we exist, and that it's reflective of the community that we're serving. So what are the things we need to know in order to do this? So the recruitment, selection, orientation, and evaluation, that's the board's job, right? A lot of folks put this back on the ED and the CEO, and if you're like me, you're like, okay, I'll do it. But really, we need to push that back. That is the board's role and responsibility. You can make sure that the right people are in the right seats for the right time, and that you are using, again, your circle, and your circle is your circle, and it's fantastic. You know people that no one else knows, and you're constantly bringing new people into the fold so that that board doesn't get stagnant. This also could be where we talk about terms. If you get on a board and there are no term limits, red flag. And there could be really great people on that board, don't get me wrong, really wonderful, engaged people. But term limits allow there to be a natural flow in and out of people so that as the organization grows and changes, that the board can do that along with it. So you don't lose the historical knowledge, but you've got this constant flow of new people in there. And we're making sure when we bring those people on that they are orientated, they feel like they have all those materials we talked about that are important for them to possess, and that they are prepared. So maybe there's a board buddy that they get, and that person can be there to help them through their first few months of board service. You are showing, the board members, a commitment to the mission and success of the organization. So we're not just bringing people in because we like them and they like us, and maybe they have a big check to give us, which is always nice. But we're doing it because they also have exhibited a strong commitment to that organization. We're making sure that we're showing we don't have a conflict of interest. Our board every year signs a new conflict of interest. Can you give me an example in the chat? Why do we need to do that every year? Why do we have to make them sign that every year? Why is it not good for them just to go ahead and tell us, hey, we don't have any conflicts and we don't have to do that all the time? Let's see what we got in here. I don't know if I missed that one. Why do we have to do that every year? Just because Kristen said she wants it and you got to do it. Things change. Yeah. Jenny, tell me more. What things could change? Because it's so important. Christina, you're right. It is super important.
I was just thinking people get new jobs and new things in their lives that are going to be a conflict. Yeah. What Keila said.
Yep, that's a great point. Our lives change. We didn't have a partner who now works at a competing organization. We started a new job and we now do business with the nonprofit, right? Maybe they don't know something is a conflict. Yep, it's a good time to always refresh that. And the key here is people often look at this and say, conflict is bad. If I have a conflict, I need to get off the board. If I have a conflict, I just need to not be involved at all. And it's actually not. The conflict is not the issue. It's communicating it and make sure that we're upfront. And if it is a conflict that impacts a vote the board is going to take, that person says, hey, I just want to remind you, I have this conflict and I'm not going to vote on that. But it doesn't mean you have to leave the organization. Might there be conflicts where that is the right path? Absolutely. And that's a good conversation to have with the board president. But this conflict of interest is more about recognizing it and putting it out in the open so that we're being transparent. And then also the composition development has to do with positions on the board. Do we know who our board president is? Do we have a treasurer? What is their role? How long are they going to serve? We probably don't want the board president to serve 6 years as the board president, right? Again, it goes into making sure that we have a steady stream of good leaders going through the organization. And we have clear job, again, here's your job description. So not only should you have a job description of your roles and responsibilities for a board member, but also when I become the treasurer, what does that mean I'm doing and I'm responsible for? Because the quickest way to get sideways is to have confusion and not, oh, you mean I'm supposed to have been doing that for the last 3 years? I didn't know that. And the other person's thinking, why aren't they doing that? Don't they know they're supposed to do that as treasurer? So having those job descriptions outlined is extremely important and will help everyone in the long run. All right, so our last one is a double whammy here. The how, the board operations. So there's two important things here. One is kind of what I alluded to, that the board is operating in a way that allows the organization to achieve its mission, and these are the keywords, effectively and efficiently, right? We can probably achieve that mission, but it takes us a super long time. We're discombobulated, and we could really be doing that a lot better if the board has its house in order and is very effective and is functioning. And then the second how do we do this, is fundraising. Board members are ensuring that the organization has the necessary resources. I was talking to a board this week, and they were talking about this concept of 100% board giving. And this is something that's been around, that's been seen as a best practice for a long time. But as we look at diversifying and making sure that our boards are inclusive, 100% board giving is really probably not a really great best practice anymore, because not everyone can give, period. Not everyone can give at the same level. And so people get caught up in thinking, well, if I'm on a board, my way of fundraising is giving. And absolutely, that's a way to do it, and that's great. But that's not the only way that board members can fundraise. It definitely is a role, but there's a lot of ways that can be used to accomplish that. So for board operations, the things we want to know: when are the meetings, right? That we set a regular, effective board meeting schedule. How long should those meetings be? Are they too long? Are they too short? Are we able to get what we need to get done in that time? And we're able to move that work forward. Board committees, do we have them? Do we, people have some very strong opinions about executive committees. Some of them are like, don't ever have an executive committee. And others are like, well, if you've got a larger board, you should have an executive committee. But the important piece is that it's still the full board that has to make those decisions. And the executive committee is there to kind of help maybe move some things forward in between meetings. But what other committees do we have? Do we require board members to serve on at least one of them, and all those kind of things? And in those committees, what are they doing? Again, there's that job description for a board member, but there should also be a committee charter that says, here's when they're going to meet, here's what they're going to do, here's how they're going to communicate their work with the full board. The board staff relationship, we know as board members, what is that role? If we have staff, we have delegated to the executive director to manage the staff. And how we help the staff is through policies, procedures, all those things. If we are a working board and there are no staff, we are the staff. We get to do the work and we're okay with that. And then board development. Strong boards are reflective about their own practice, celebrating achievements and creating plans. The board's role in board operations is also assessing and reviewing that on a regular basis. You know, every year, maybe at the annual board meeting, we talk about how are the board meetings? You know, we do maybe a survey monkey. Are you getting what you need out of this meeting? I know some boards who after every meeting, they send a little like 3-question survey monkey to their board members. You know, what could have been done better in today's board meeting? What could have, you know, was great? And what do you suggest for the future? Just to kind of have that constant check-in to make sure that we're looking at our own performance. And then our fundraising. Every board member has a role in raising funds, but it may look different. Some people may be able to write the check. Some people may be able to volunteer their time. Some people may be able to do pro bono things that help reduce expenses. Some people have a circle of influence that they can invite to events. Some folks can tell their story, right? And they are those folks that have this connection to the mission like some of us may never understand. They can tell their story to others, and that will then encourage them to give. So it's not that everybody does the same thing or that everyone has to write a check, but we all understand how we make sure that that organization is able to be sustainable. Planning, let's map it out. Let's figure out what are our goals. Some boards have their own fundraising goals, you know, separate from the full organization. Some of them may say, hey, we're going to invite 10 people to the gala or whatever it might be, but having a plan and making sure that board members understand what your role is and what's expected of you is really important. And then that you have the tools and the systems that you need to be effective. So if they're saying, hey, we want you to go fundraise, like, is there a toolkit? Like, is there, you know, a invitation? Is there a whatever social media, you know, thing that I can copy and paste? Do I also have the training? You know, part of the board education might be bringing in a fundraiser to talk about how to fundraise more effectively. So making sure that you have those tools and knowing, thinking about how do I fit in? What can I really bring to the table? How can I help that organization be financially sustainable is really important for you to think about. So we know what our role is. We own it. We're comfortable with that. We make other board members feel comfortable with that. We are receiving training and we have those systems in place. So again, it may not be the ED that's always going, hey, let me bring a fundraiser in. Let me give you these tools. Those, you have to be ready and willing to say, hey, I need a resource, you know, or let's talk about who can we bring in to give the board training, how to make an ask, how to make, you know, our board fundraising event effective, all those things that'll be really important. It's important for board members to feel comfortable doing that. All right, I've talked a ton at you. There's a lot of information floating around in your head. We are just right on schedule, I think, Abigail, which is good for me. We're going to play a little game. So our colleagues in Washington, the Washington Nonprofit Institute, a few years ago created this really cool Boards in Gear game. And if I was with you in person, there would be a board game in front of you. We would have some dice. We would be having a great time, but we're still going to have a great time. And we're going to kind of stretch our 6:35 muscles on a Thursday afternoon and talk about some of your experiences maybe that you've already had as board members, or maybe get you thinking and start thinking as a board member for those of you that haven't been able to do that before. So let's go to that. So I'm going to put this in the chat for everybody. I'm going to go ahead and make my screen not so big so I can manage the chat a little bit better. So I'm going to put this in the chat for everyone. These are links to your board game questions. And then our fancy schmancy spin wheel. So let's see, how many do we have right now, Abigail? We've got 18. So I'm thinking we probably can go into groups maybe of 4 to 5. So what you're going to do is when you get in your breakout room, first you're going to want to bring this link up and I'll show you what it looks like here. this is your board game questions. So you'll notice you have 5 areas, the ones we just went through: connection to the cause, 2 is responsibilities, 3 is composition development, 4 is board operations, and 5 is fundraising. So you're going to open your little spin wheel in each of your groups. You can take turns. You're going to go ahead and spin that wheel and put the sound on because it's super fun. This is the fun we have on Zoom now, right? All right, so responsibilities. So if I was the person doing that, I would jump over here and I'm going to choose one of these. So choose one that you're most comfortable answering. Describe why I might care about our mission. Yep, do we have a question? Go ahead.
No, we're just seeing the PowerPoint. So if you were trying to show the wheel.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Let's see here. You didn't get to see the pinwheel. So sad. Okay. Let me show you here. How about now? Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So you just click that little spin wheel there. Thanks, Abigail. That's the funnest part. We got to see that. So let's see what we get here. All right. We've got fundraising. I'm sure everyone's favorite one. So if you spin that and it's your turn, go ahead and go to 5. And pick one of those. You can say why fundraising matters to you. If you've been on a board before, maybe describe, you know, how you've told the story of your organization. You could explain why or if you give to the organization. So you can choose and pick and just take turns. And we're going to do that for about 15 minutes or so. I'm going to break you into breakout rooms, and I'm going to pop in and out of the room so that I can kind of offer help or just hear what you guys are talking about, because I love learning more about what you think. So any questions on that? Go ahead and take yourself off mute. We're small enough if you've got questions. And if you get stuck, you can come back into the main room, or I think you can even ask for assistance when you're in the breakout room. I missed somebody. Was that you, Abigail?
Yes, I was just going to say I'll be in the main room. So if you kind of get kicked out of Zoom or need to be put back in, you can just come back to the main one and we'll work that out.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and just assign you automatically. Create those rooms. We're just going to do it. How many rooms do we want? We want to do 3. One, two, 3. There we go. Hopefully I don't cut anybody off mid-sentence. I know at least the room I was in, I would be cutting myself off, so.
It's my favorite thing when people come back in and they finish their sentence and you have no context. It's like the best game ever.
Kind of fun.
Or you just pop in and you're like, the answer is yes. And everyone's like,
yes. I think the other ones, maybe it gives them a minute or so to choose. If everybody's back in here. All right, welcome back. Those of you that I heard when we were in the rooms, you guys were having some great conversations. So hopefully that was just a little bit of fun, not too, you know, cumbersome. But for those questions that are in there for that sheet, you know, those would be great questions to bring up at a board meeting. You know, they'd be great things to consider as you, you know, deal with what board you're going to serve on. Good thoughts for you to think about. Some boards incorporate a strategic question into their board meetings. So these are great lists of things that you could talk about as board members, so you're talking about those things that are important. I'll leave you with the set of resources, and I know Abigail's going to share this presentation with you in the follow-up. Abigail, I'll send that to you as soon as I'm done. But these are some additional resources that have a lot of great free things that you can tap into. But thank you all so much. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate your interaction, engagement, and thanks again, Abigail and team, for having me. It's been such a pleasure. So I will hand it back over to you all.
Thank you. And it looks like we do have a question from Christina, wondering how we find professional resources for new or young board nonprofits, specifically financial responsibilities.
Ooh, great question. So the Alliance actually holds a business on board training, and it goes through the financial, the legal, and the fundraising role of a nonprofit in way more detail than we did today. And there are scholarships where people can attend that for free, thanks to Vitalist Health Foundation. So I will put that link in the chat for you so you can check out when the next one is coming up, and you can apply for those scholarships to attend. They bring in a CPA, but she's really great. She doesn't talk over you. She talks about all those financial pieces that you'll want to look for as board members. So great question.
Awesome. So now kick it over to Jessica for the raffle.
Okay, for those of you that were here last week, get excited. For those of you that weren't, you should also be excited. Can everyone see the Wheel of Fun? Oh, not yet. Hold on. Does everyone see?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Come on, Zoom. All right, first up. We have Allie.
Thank you.
Canyon.
Yay!
Christina M. Okay, getting down to the wire here. Chris Noker, who did have to leave 5 minutes early, so I left her on here. I just want to do this all day. Kelly K, double winner.
Oh, spin again. I won last week.
We can also do more than 5 winners. So let's see who else we get to win today. Jill. Okay, I'm gonna do one more. Okay, I'm gonna try Keela. Okay, that concludes our raffle winners for this session. Be on the lookout for an email from me, and I'll be asking you to choose from a couple different leadership prizes that we have. And I'll also be asking you for your address. I believe if you won last week, everyone's should have been delivered by end of day today. So hopefully y'all got those in the mail, but please message me if you didn't. And Abby, do you want to close us out?
Yes, thank you. So thank you all for coming. If you'd like credit or leadership credit, please put your name in the chat. I will be sending that over to you tomorrow, so you should see that next week. I definitely want to thank the Junior League of Phoenix Foundation again for their grant that made this training possible for this one and last week. And thank you, Kristen. Both sessions were incredibly informative. And I know we'll definitely have more ladies who watch the recordings of this, such great information. So thank you so much for that. I will be sending, well, if you would like the PowerPoint, let me know. I can email it to you. Otherwise, this and the recording of both sessions, working on getting that uploaded to Digital Cheetah. There's about 2 ways that can go. Katie's amazing and has told me both of them. So I'm working on figuring out that. So bear with me. I'm not technologically that advanced. So stay tuned for those. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining. Kristen, thank you again, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.